Good evening and welcome to Thai PBS World. At this very juncture, you could see how youth movement or millennial student protests are gaining momentum in Thailand. And they propose three demands from the government, like house dissolution, stop political harassment, and amending constitution. And what's the implication of active youth movement at this very juncture, especially on political change in Thailand? Thai PBS World tonight, คุณเทพชัยยอง and คุณ Nat Bunak talk to a political scientist from Chulalongkorn University.
I'm sure you must have been observing the student rallies and judging from their demands and from the messages that they have conveyed, both the messages that have been conveyed openly and those that have been conveyed in subtle ways. What do you think you are seeing?
Well, we're seeing the continuation of the earlier flash mobs before the virus outbreak. Early this year, we saw some protests. I think that the catalyst at that time was the dissolution of the Future Forward Party. And ironically now, Kun Thepchai, the government has done a very good job containing the coronavirus pandemic. The outbreak is kind of under control in Thailand. So this has allowed people to resume activities, including the young men and women who are the students leading these protests. So the political temperature, when you have protests in the streets like this, every time there's protests in the streets in Thailand of any given size, any critical size, we have more stress. Kun Thepchai, it's just the temperature has risen. I think the tension also has mounted, and it's not, it's not kind of the direction we want to go, to have this kind of confrontation, this kind of tension. But because I think the grievances of these young people are not being addressed, that's why we're going to see more tension.
I'm not saying that the government is ignoring the students' demand or their rallies, but judging from the reaction from the Prime Minister himself, it looks like he is underestimating the strength of the students. So what do you think will happen if the government continues to sort of sit on its hands and doesn't respond to what the students want?
Well, the student demands, first of all, you mentioned the three demands, the dissolution of the parliament and constitutional revision or even a new constitution leading to a new poll, new election. And then the second one, I think, is the cessation, stopping the intimidation and harassment and infringement of civil liberties. So these are kind of the demands we've been hearing. The government, I think, has tried to perhaps redirect or divert the student grievances into some kind of a parliamentary channel, some kind of committee. But I think that effort has not gone far enough. Moreover, Kun Thepchai, we saw that the students, I think if you look at their demands and their kind of mood, their complaints and grievances, they're saying that they don't have a future. They're saying that Thailand doesn't have a future. And I think that we have to think, we have to remember these young men and women, they did not rise up. They did not complain. They went along with Thai politics as it was over the last 20 years. They're in their early 20s, late teens. They put up with the military coup in 2006. They're very young. Military coup in 2014 and military government. We didn't see any uprising, Kun Thepchai. And the constitution that we have now actually went through a referendum, and it passed a referendum. At that time, there was no widespread protests around the country among the young people. But now, somehow, over the last couple of years, I've noticed young people are speaking up. I think the Future Forward dissolution was a catalyst. It was kind of a fuse that lit pent-up grievances. And so now they are awakened, activated, and they're having their say. Government somehow has to find a way of meeting them some way along the way, maybe halfway, some kind of accommodation, concession, some kind of listening. Otherwise the grievances will multiply, will widen, and that cannot be good for the country.
With all the student protests going on in Bangkok and elsewhere in Thailand, is there anything that worries you at the moment with the student protests coming to the streets?
Yes, many things worry me because of the rising tension. And of course, we all want to have Thailand peaceful and stable and prosperous. I think the eventual ultimate outcome like that we all want. But along the way, there has to be some kind of compromise. There has to be a sense of justice, some kind of accountability. And I think these young men and women in the streets, it worries me that first, they're very pent up. They have a lot of feelings, a lot of grievances that I think have been suppressed, have been pent up, have been kept inside, and now they're being unleashed. And unleashed initially, maybe the Future Forward Party disillusioned, but now it's more than that. I think now that they feel that they have no future, Thailand has no way ahead, and it's not even, they're calling for democracy and they're calling for a new poll, constitutional change and so on. But to me, let's look at it this way. If the military government, since after the May 2014 military coup, if that military government was more effective, if it delivered more, if the economy expanded over that time, instead of piling up the debt, 350 billion baht a year debt, and going nowhere, then maybe the students, had it been more successful, the military government, the students may have put up with it. If they have a future, maybe they wouldn't be speaking up and taking to the streets the way that they were doing now. So it worries me that they're very pent up. There are a lot of grievances that are not being answered. Also, the technologies are on their side in a way they can organize in ways we haven't seen before. This is a nationwide protest movement. It's not just confined to Bangkok. And it's not just university students, it's also high school students, a lot of young people. You can almost draw a line across the demographics, people under 35, under 25, people who have the most direct stake in the future of Thailand. And if they don't have a future, they have to take matters into their own hands more and demanding these changes.
But the age group seems to be younger and younger. So what does it mean for Thai politics now that we're seeing more teens joining the protests and the demonstrations in Thailand?
Well, young people, in the past, we have to ask ourselves, where were they? Where were the young people in the 2006 military coup, in all the protests, the different colors that we've seen over the years? They were young. I think that they've seen a lot. And now I think they've got to a point where they think that they have to do something because the country is going nowhere and their future is elusive, it's nowhere to be seen. And they also have seen a lot of intimidation, harassment, injustice. The current scandal we have, a scion of a big conglomerate family, very, very wealthy, involved in a car crash with a policeman, can also get off scot-free. Something like that. And the people have been, there have been forced disappearances, there have been systemic harassment, intimidation. So this also has been fanning the flames of discontent among the young. And then you have when they felt like they had a voice, when they felt like even though the rules, they may not have favored the constitution, maybe they felt was crooked, distorted, the Senate is not elected, whatever. But they had a political party, a vehicle that could voice their grievances, their concerns, their interests. When that party was dissolved and abolished, I think that was a wake-up call for them that this is not the way that they want, and so that's why we're seeing them in the streets.
And that's all from Thai PBS World tonight. Thank you very much for watching.